Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Today's story features a family man with a rock-solid retirement plan, a son who spent 9 years pretending to be a med student, and a Thanksgiving reunion that went, well, off the rails is an understatement. We're talking life insurance policies, handwritten checklists that read like a psychopath's shopping spree, and a crime scene that made seasoned officers gag. In the center of it all, a quiet, unassuming guy with zero job experience, but a PhD in betrayal. Buckle up, because this one's got layers, but none of them are good. But before we get into that story, if you like your true crime brief and bingeable, you have found the right podcast. Tap the follow button now to access at least 2 episodes per week. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder. Get killing knives. Get sledgehammer. Bring food grinder. Get bleach. Sounds like a twisted to-do list of a Hollywood villain, right? Except this isn't fiction. This is verbatim from the actual notes of Joel Michael Guy Jr., a man preparing to commit 2 heinous murders. These weren't random acts of violence. They were methodical, calculated, and rooted in betrayal. The victims? His own parents, Joel Michael Guy Sr., a respected pipeline engineering designer, and Lisa Guy, a devoted wife of 31 years. Their love story had blended families. Joel Sr. brought 3 daughters from a previous marriage, and Lisa warmly welcomed them into her life. Soon the couple added a child of their own, a son named Joel Michael Guy Jr., affectionately called Joel Michael by the family. For most of the marriage, Joel Sr.'s lucrative career allowed Lisa to focus on raising their son, and by all accounts, she threw herself into motherhood with everything she had. Lisa adored Joel Michael, who grew up quiet, reserved, and seemingly content. He lacked for nothing, thanks to Lisa's dedication. When the time came for college, Lisa didn't hesitate to return to the workforce, taking a job as a human resources accounts administrator. Nearly her entire paycheck went toward supporting Joel Michael's education, covering everything from tuition to living expenses. From the outside, this might have seemed like a parenting win. Joel Michael was enrolled at George Washington University, pursuing his dream of becoming a plastic surgeon. His bills were paid, and he had the space and support to focus entirely on his studies. What more could a young man ask for? But as we'll see, life isn't always what it seems. Life was finally settling into a peaceful rhythm for Joel Guy Sr. and Lisa. With their son, Joel Michael, out of the house and supposedly building his future, the couple could finally focus on themselves. Hiking, days out on the water, and doting on their growing brood of grandchildren filled their time, a well-earned reward after decades of hard work and sacrifice. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Joel Sr., at 61, lost the prestigious job that had long been the foundation of their financial stability. Faced with an uncertain future, the couple made a decision. Rather than re-enter the workforce, Joel would retire. They had savings, retirement plans, and a shared vision for the next phase of their lives. They would sell their Knoxville, Tennessee home and move to Surgunsville. And I'm probably not saying that right, but it's a place close to Joel's heart where they could spend their golden years. It was a thoughtful, practical plan, except for one glaring complication. For nearly a decade, Joel Michael had been a full-grown adult living a life subsidized by his parents. At 28, he was still working on his dream of becoming a plastic surgeon, A dream that had, in reality, fizzled just after one semester at George Washington University. He dropped out, failed to find direction, and never held a job. Instead, he depended entirely on the money Lisa earned to fund his lifestyle. For Joel Sr. and Lisa, retiring meant one unavoidable consequence: financially cutting off their son. Lisa's salary, which had been Joel Michael's lifeline for years, would no longer be available. It was time for him to stand on his own 2 feet, a reality that they openly discussed with his half-sisters over Thanksgiving in 2016. Joel Michael had already been given the news. His parents had been clear. He had several months to figure out how to support himself. By all appearances, he took the announcement in stride. But appearances, as we've learned, can be deceiving. Beneath his quiet, reclusive exterior, something far darker was brewing. Joel Michael wasn't just brooding over his impending financial independence. He had a plan. He knew his parents had life insurance policies, each of them worth $500,000. If one parent died, the other would collect the payout. But if both died at the same time, that money, along with the house, savings, and other assets, would go straight to their next of kin, Joel Michael himself. With this grim arithmetic in mind, Joel Michael started preparing for what would become a horrifyingly calculated crime. Surveillance footage shows him shopping for supplies as early as November 7th, 2016. Over multiple trips, he assembled a so-called murder kit, buying items like knives, a sledgehammer, a food grinder, and enough bleach to sterilize the crime scene. He paid in cash, used self-checkout whenever possible, and completed his final purchase just 5 days before the murders. On November 26, 2016, Joel Michael returned to his parents' Knoxville home. Just days earlier, he had been there for Thanksgiving, though he spent most of the holiday in his childhood bedroom, avoiding the family. This time, he had a chilling agenda. Upstairs in the home gym his father had set up, Joel Sr. likely thought nothing of encountering his son. Joel Michael, however, was ready. Armed with one of the knives he had meticulously purchased, he ambushed his father. Joel Sr., physically fit and active, 61 years old, fought back fiercely. The struggle tore through the room, leaving overturned exercise equipment, shattered blinds, and blood smeared across the walls. Despite his strength, Joel Sr. was overpowered. Joel Michael stabbed him over 40 times, with one blow so forceful that part of the knife blade broke off in his father's shoulder. When the struggle finally ended, Joel Sr. lay dead. For Joel Michael, the hardest part was over, or so he thought. Now he turned his attention to his next victim, his mother. Lisa had been out grocery shopping while her husband was being attacked. When she returned home, something must have tipped her off that all was not well. She dropped her groceries near the front door and rushed upstairs, heading directly for the gym. What greeted her was unthinkable, and she had no time to process it. Joel Michael, the son that she had loved and sacrificed for, attacked her with the same brutal ferocity. He stabbed her more than 30 times, breaking 9 of her ribs in the process. With both parents dead, Joel Michael set about carrying out a meticulous and gruesome cleanup, as outlined in a handwritten notebook recovered later by investigators. His plan was detailed and methodical, aimed at ensuring his parents' bodies would never be found intact. He started with his mother. Using knives and brute force, he decapitated her, the coroner later determining that her head was mostly removed by pulling and twisting. He placed her head in a pot on the stove to boil. He dismembered both parents, severing arms, legs, and hands, and placed their torsos in large containers filled with corrosive chemicals in the bathroom. Finally, he turned the house's heat to its highest setting to accelerate decomposition. Despite his attention to detail, Joel Michael overlooked one critical element: Lisa's job. When she didn't show up for work the following Monday, her boss grew concerned and called the police for a welfare check. What officers found when they arrived would defy even the darkest imagination. When 2 officers arrived at the Guy family home to perform a welfare check, they expected the usual, maybe an accidental fall, or just a miscommunication. What greeted them instead was the stuff of nightmares. The stench hit them first, an overwhelming odor that made them gag. As they moved through the house, the horrifying reality unfolded. In the dining room, they found Joel Sr. and Lisa's wallets, and Joel Michael's sledgehammer casually placed on the table. Another table was cluttered with firearms, but it was the kitchen where the true horror lay. A pot simmering on the stove containing Lisa's head and what investigators would later call a diabolical stew of human remains. The house was a tableau of violence and calculated cruelty. Bloody clothes were piled throughout. In the bathroom, the parents' torsos were dissolving in corrosive chemicals. In the gym, Joel Sr.'s hand had been left on a bench as if casually discarded. Joel Michael was immediately flagged as a suspect. Investigators put him under surveillance for 2 days before arresting him outside the Baton Rouge apartment that his mother's money had still been paying for. A search of his car revealed yet another chilling clue: the meat grinder he'd purchased as part of his murder kit. During his trial, Joel Michael pleaded not guilty, despite the mountain of evidence against him, including his meticulous notebook detailing the plan to dismember and dispose of his parents. Bizarrely, his legal team requested the death penalty if he were convicted. The courts denied this request, and his defense offered no counter-arguments or evidence of his innocence. Joel Michael was ultimately found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Even as recently as 2023, his appeals to have the sentence overturned were denied, ensuring he remains behind bars. The murders of Joel Guy Sr. and Lisa Guy stand as a tragic reminder of how appearances can mask unspeakable realities. A family that once seemed tight-knit and supportive was torn apart by greed and violence, orchestrated by the very son they had loved and sacrificed for. Joel Guy Sr. now spends his days in prison, leaving behind a legacy of horror. His parents, however, are remembered for their kindness, dedication, and love, a stark contrast to the brutality they faced in their final moments. Their story, though devastating, continues to resonate as a cautionary tale of betrayal and the darkness that can lurk where it's least expected. That's 10-Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and thank you for taking the time to listen. If you're a new listener, subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts and follow on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode, or you can go to 10minutemurder.com and find the links to that, as well as everything else about the podcast. I haven't read a listener email in a while, so let's do that. Dear Joe, I think I've heard you mention on a previous episode that you are not for the death penalty. Is this true? And if it is, why is that? Thanks, Tracy in NYC. And yeah, Tracy, thank you for the email. You're 100% correct. That it may seem contradictory to the subject matter that I talk about. You would think, I consume all of this true crime, all this murder news, and would go sort through evidence and information about things. You would think, yeah, Joe's probably pro-death penalty. He wants these people, these criminals, these murderers, these serial killers to be put to death. No, I don't. And the reasons are kind of complicated, and I've mentioned this before, but first of all, if you are pro-death penalty, more power to you. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's not a way that I feel. And there are a few reasons, and I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but the least of which is we still have things we can learn from these people. We can research them. We can interview them. Like the Mindhunter series where they're talking to these serial killers. That helps build profiles to catch future killers. And if you kill them, you lose that resource. Also, I don't morally think that killing is an answer to killing. Does that make sense? I think that a punishment should be a punishment, and you can't be punished if you're dead. And I get what you're saying. Well, the death is the punishment. Yeah, I mean, they just cease to exist. They're not really being punished at that point. And then you're going to tell me that, they're suffering in hell. That's their punishment. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have all the answers. I'm just telling you how I personally feel. And I get the arguments on both sides of it. I just happen to land on the side that doesn't think that you should be killing people for killing people. We have found so many times in recent history that you can look this up, by the way. This isn't just me spouting things, but you can look it up and see how many times in the recent history that we have killed people, and later on we've gone, oh, wait a minute, they weren't really guilty. Or at bare minimum, there's question about their guilt. And you can't unexecute them, so now what? Anyway, Tracy, thank you for the email. And if you listening would like to send me an email, question, story idea, any of that, joe@10minutemurder.com. And that's going to do it. If you're off to binge more episodes, don't let me stop you. Thank you so much for listening to 10 Minute Murder.